Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? This is Enrique. Today we have a very special guest, Annie. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, thank you. My name is Annie Gavica, and I'm the Executive Director at the Basque Museum and Cultural Center in Boise, Idaho.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I was actually surprised that there is a Basque community in Idaho because I always assume that Idaho tends to be a homogeneous place. So I was kind of like taken by surprise that there's a Basque community there that's actually vibrant. So
Yeah,
uh,
it's huge. I mean, comparatively, it's a huge community. It's not like a majority or even one of the main minority groups, but it's significant.
okay, so can you explain to me what your organization does, what the Basque Museum does, and explain a little bit more to my listeners about the Basque community in Idaho.
Sure. So the Basque Museum and Cultural Center was founded in 1985 with the basic mission to preserve, promote, and perpetuate Basque history and culture. And as many Basques immigrated from the Basque Country between part of it in Spain, part of it in France, along the Pyrenees on the Bay of Biscay, immigrated to the United States in search of better jobs and better opportunity. That first generation was just really trying to survive. And so then the coming generations were also wanting to better themselves, but also remember their roots and where they came from and celebrate that. And so places started popping up, not just in Idaho, but throughout the Western United States, where many of them immigrated to, called Basque Centers. And it was usually a cultural center or a membership group that got together and celebrated periodically throughout the year, celebrating their culture, language, music, dance, food, those kinds of things. And so the Basque Museum took that just kind of another level of that. So we have exhibition space for usually historic exhibits, but we've also done art exhibits and various things, trying to teach the visitors and other Basque Americans about Basque culture, not only here in Idaho, throughout the West, in other countries, and in the homeland of the Basque Country. We have those exhibits. We also have a cultural center aspect that has language classes and presentations and other smaller events throughout the year. And then we also have a Basque language immersion preschool. So for kids ages 3 to 5, whether they have Basque ancestry or not, learning a second language is really helpful for them as they grow older. So we opened in 1998 a Basque language immersion preschool. So I kind of oversee all of those major things. And as there's like a staff of, there's 10 of us total that work between the preschool and here at the museum, doing little bits and pieces of all of that work.
Okay, awesome. And I also wanted to ask you, in Idaho, has the Basque community ever experienced like any type of prejudices, like from outsiders, or any type of like racism? Because a lot of people tend to look at Basque as being, part of the Hispanic community, like immigrants. Has there ever been an issue in Boise?
So when many of the Basques immigrated here, it was kind of a wave of immigration. And so they were coming over with, I mean, there were Irish people coming over prior to them coming over. So they weren't the first immigrants. So people were maybe used to, people not born and raised right around them. And so there was less, for sure, less issues that they encountered of discrimination of any kind. However, we hear about some here and there, just because mostly their issue was their language barrier.
Hmm.
They physically look similar to white people
Hmm.
in the area. And so in that aspect, they weren't, you couldn't tell whether they were from here or not until they started speaking. And then
Right.
they either didn't know much language or not at all. And so in some cases, there's very few cases that we've really heard of, but it's not to say it didn't happen.
Okay, so there isn't really much of an issue with the Basque community as there is with the Hispanic community in terms of Hispanophobia.
Probably, yeah, I would say that's probably the case. We definitely haven't heard about it as nearly as much.
Yeah, the reason why I asked because Hispanophobia in the United States is very rampant, and one of the things that I do with my organization is to address it and to combat, and also to educate people, about Hispanophobia and how to get people that have been affected by it to come forward. So that's one of the
Sure.
things that I do, and I also like to partner with other Hispanic groups. I know that the Basque, they have their own language, but technically they are considered part of the Hispanic people because culturally they've been part of Spain for forever.
Yeah, they came from part of the Spanish Peninsula, so they're technically considered Hispanic, but otherwise culturally, genetically different. Yeah,
Right, of course, of course.
yeah, yeah.
And I was gonna ask, does the Basque community or the Basque Center over in Boise, Idaho, do they like do any type of partnerships with other Hispanic groups? Do they reach out to the Hispanic community at all, or
Um,
what?
yes, yeah, yes and no. I mean, not just Hispanic groups, honestly. There's quite a diverse community here in Boise. I mean, overall, you hear in the news how non-diverse Idaho tends
Right.
to be. But in the Boise area, the Treasure Valley area, which is several communities kind of just smashed together mostly, it's quite diverse. And there's a very, very vibrant Hispanic community and organizations that we've worked with on occasion to promote like cultural heritage days and things like that. And we've also worked with other interesting groups as far as not really having a cultural connection, but just celebrating one's culture in general. And so
Okay.
we've worked with several Bosnian groups, for example, Greek groups, Italian groups, kind of you name it. So we haven't like specifically focused on one or the other, but we try and make connections with various cultural groups, various museum groups, kind of try and run the gamut really.
Right, right. Yeah, like one of the things that I'm doing is that I'm reaching out to different diaspora groups that are considered part of the Hispanic nation. Like the other
Mhm.
day, I did a podcast with a member of the Isleños community. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them or not.
No, I'm not.
Isleños is Spanish for Canary Islanders. So I found out there's
Oh,
there's a Canary Islander
I-
community in Louisiana that still exists.
interesting.
So they were more than happy to reach out to me, and I was able to speak with them. And that's the same thing that I'm doing with the Basque community. Like I want the Basque community to know that they are considered our brothers, that we consider them part of the Hispanic people, and there are to be better relations and cultural relations between both groups. Because as you know, a good portion of a lot of Hispanic people come from Basque ancestry. Like I'm not sure if you know who Pedro Biso Campos was. He was a Puerto Rican nationalist independent leader of Puerto Rico that basically fought for Puerto Rico's independence from the United States. And what's interesting is
Mhm.
that he was born to a Spanish Basque father that immigrated to Puerto Rico, and he was mixed with a native Puerto Rican woman on the island who was Afro Puerto Rican.
Mhm.
So and what's interesting is that Pedro Biso Campos, he also co-founded and wrote the Irish Constitution. Not too many people know about that, and he also was instrumental in helping Gandhi's quest to get independence from England for India. And he's actually a very well-known Basque. A lot of people don't know about him.
Yeah, there's lots of those hidden gems of Basques kind of throughout history, um, because they were, as you said, kind of referred to as Spanish or Hispanic or French or whatever, just in general. And so as researchers are coming out with and learning about more things and getting into more details, things like one of Christopher Columbus's ships was completely built and sailed by a whole Basque crew from the Basque country. One of the ships was, places like, or people like Ferdinand Magellan, who actually died circumnavigating the globe. His first mate was Juan Sebastian Elcano, who is from the town of Guetaria in the Basque Country. And little things like that. John Adams visited the Basque Country in an effort to study democracy, and had that influence, that the Basque Country's democracy had that influence on writing of, our Constitution and things like that. So there's all these weird little connections that when you dig a little bit, there's some Basque connection here and there. And especially with Hispanic names too, of course, they are, intermixing. And so you see more and more. It's interesting.
Yeah, what's interesting about the Basque community or the Basque people is that even though they have been in the Basque country forever, their language and culture is not related to anybody else. So it's like their language is considered what's called an isolated language.
Exactly. It's quite unique. Some great examples that I like to use in Spanish, we say mi casa es su casa. And then that same phrase, which we don't really use in Basque, but that similar phrase would be nire etxea, zure etxea da. And so it doesn't even sound similar. The grammar, sentence structure is completely different as well. And so it's very interesting to compare the two because they are so close. One thinks they should be connected, but they're really not.
Right. And I also wanted to ask, have you ever been to the Basque country, and what is the Basque country like?
Yeah, so I have been fortunate in my lifetime to go quite a few times for various reasons. Kind of quick history. My mother took me when I was just starting high school, and I hated it because I didn't speak any Spanish. And so my experience then wasn't great. And then when I came to college at Boise State University, I also joined another Basque organization here in Boise called the Owen Basque Dancers, which is a group of kids mostly, but 14 to 30 plus year olds that continue the culture through dance and music. And so through that group, we traveled back and forth a couple times, and then I've studied over there a couple times in college and afterwards, and then had various like work related trips and just for pleasure as well to go visit the place. And so I've been pretty lucky to immerse myself in the culture and the country as well. And it's really, really beautiful. They have a really unique, and I can't compare it to any place, but I'd imagine other countries have some similarities in that they have a really significant tie to their history and their traditions, but at the same time are quite progressive. And so those two things do such a kind of unique little dance with each other. Like the language is very prominent in certain areas of the Basque Country, but not really used outside of the Basque Country. So everyone there, probably under the age of 50, is at least bilingual so that they can communicate elsewhere too, right?
Right.
So, beautiful, like it's just a really interesting connection. You're walking down the street and there's buildings that are hundreds of years old right next to the Guggenheim Museum, which is a very contemporary art museum, beautiful building, and then right next to it, a few 100-year-old church. So it's really, really a unique experience for me. And there's probably some comparisons in other European countries, especially, but just a very, very interesting experience. And I would suggest traveling there for anybody who can to experience that.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to the Basque country because, like I said, I think their culture and the people are unique. I hear it's very beautiful, especially like the countryside, the vineyards. It's like there's a lot of nice things to do there, and they have like a rich cultural history. I know that under Franco, he suppressed a lot of the cultural identity of the Basque. I think he even banned the Basque language in school. And it wasn't until like after he passed away and Spain became a democracy that there was a reassurance of Basque cultural identity, because he was more of a fascist.
Yeah, the like very big picture view of that is when Franco came into power in the 30s to the mid 70s when he died, it was illegal to do, speak any other language but pure Spanish in his mind. And so even places like Galicia, right above Portugal, part of Spain, but they have a different dialect of Spanish called Gallego.
Mhm.
And in Catalonia, they speak Catalan.
Right.
And the Basques in the Basque country, the three of those were kind of suppressed. Similarly, it's said, though I'm not sure, it's said that the Basques were a little more rebellious as far as trying to keep using it.
Yes.
I don't know how accurate that is. I don't have but it seemed to, in the end, work, because it's definitely a huge priority in the government in the Basque area, to teach people the language, not just in the country, but outside of the Basque country, the diaspora as well. So yeah, there's a chunk of time there that it was illegal. You could be, imprisoned or
Right.
worse for being caught speaking the language or celebrating your Basque identity, really.
Right. So my another question I have for you is the Basque language. Would any Spanish speaker be able to understand it, or would it be difficult for people to comprehend it?
It would be difficult. One would maybe, if one is like well versed, close to native speaker of Spanish, they may be able to pick up a few words here and there because they've been borrowed from Spain, or from Spanish, sorry. But for the most part, no, they wouldn't really understand it. Similarly, if you go to the French side of the Basque country, well, a French speaker wouldn't necessarily understand them either, though they have borrowed some French words. And similarly, I grew up in a ranching community, so there are a lot of my classmates were from Mexico, and you would notice that when they would borrow, if they didn't know the word in English or Spanish, they'd use the other one, right? And so it kind of becomes this hybrid language at times. That's similar idea in the Basque country too. They, it's such an ancient language. They didn't have a word for car. And so in Spanish, it's coche, and in Basque, or Euskera, the Basque language, it's cochea. So not a big stretch. So in some cases, you would understand a word here or there, but overall, it would be near impossible.
Yeah, the reason why I asked, because I am a native. I do speak Spanish, like Catalan. I don't speak it, but I could understand it because it's more similar to Spanish, except for like one or two words that are a little bit different. But Catalan, I can understand. Like I've never even heard Basque, so I wouldn't be able to know, different words or whatever. But I am definitely interested in learning it, and possibly having Spanish United, learn some Basque to reach out to other Basque people that will be willing to join Spanish United.
For sure, yeah. We offer here at the Basque Museum Basque language classes. They're currently all online, and we have some pretty incredible teachers that are all over the world, quite literally. We have one teacher in the Basque country, one teacher in Argentina, and then several throughout the United States that are teaching the Basque language to adults in the evening. So people that are interested or want to learn a little more about it. And then throughout the summer, we often have little like mini courses if you just want to test it out, see if it's something of interest. I would check out our website, it's basquemuseum.eus, and see when those are available to kind of test the waters. And then often online we share on our social media phrases and words and different articles about the language and how unique and different it is too. So it gives you kind of a broad explanation of things.
Right, of course. And I also wanted to ask, like, Hispanic people that may not know about Basque culture is like, how do you think the Basque Museum will be able to reach out to them?
We're always quite busy. And so there's how we would like to do it versus how we can do it. We usually use a lot of social media. It seems to reach a pretty broad group here. There's very, as I said earlier, a very large Hispanic population throughout the Treasure Valley and Idaho in general. And so hoping that it reaches through their various activities that we put together and collaborations, either through cultural organizations or the city of Boise or the state in various ways, kind of bringing multiple cultures together and celebrating them that way. That's kind of our outreach, and connecting in that way, I guess.
Because I think that if the Basque community were to become like a voice to the Hispanic community, because I know that in California we have a huge Hispanic community, but I know that in Idaho is not that big compared to over here.
Oh,
I
sure.
really I really think that the Basque community could do a lot of benefit for the Hispanic community by being advocates, especially since the Basque have been more established. And I think they could do a lot in combating Hispanophobia from, you know, people that may look at Hispanics as people that are foreigners that should not be here. You know, because Hispanics don't have too many allies or too many advocates. So I think that is something that I think the Basque community could definitely do, and also they could have better allies with Hispanic communities as well.
Yeah, there's always the hope of collaboration and working together and doing those kinds of things for sure. There is a huge, well, huge, relatively huge for Idaho, Hispanic community in Nampa, which is like 30 minutes from us. And they have some great organizations and things that are work. And I don't even know probably 90% about what they do, but they've been working a lot with the city and the state in various ways too. So unfortunately, I haven't had the time to educate myself on what their kind of mission statement is and see how they're combating some of those issues. But it would be interesting to collaborate and see what those things are, how you can share them, I guess.
Yeah, Spanish United is definitely willing to work with the Basque community if the Basque community of Idaho or the museum would be willing to work with us. We could probably do like township meetings, you know, like meetings with, you know, different people and talk about concerns about both communities and how we can work together to resolve Hispanophobia, or maybe there's like Bascophobia if I'm pronouncing it right, you know, and
Yeah,
to
it's not
work
a thing
together,
really. Mhm,
to work together.
mhm. Yeah, that would be, it would be another thing to put on our to-do list for sure. Yeah.
And one more question before I go. Are there like any tours that the Basque community has to Latin America, to the country that you're aware of?
We, the Basque Museum is actually as a bit of a fundraiser right now, selling raffle tickets for a trip to the Basque Country. And
Mhm.
so on our website, one can do that. Usually trips to the Basque Country are, you know, kind of families going over to see other family, students going over to study, things like that. But we always offer to assist in any way we can, like connecting them with several wineries should they be interested in touring the wine country, or if they wanted to go to museums or, you know, see a concert or something like that. We always offer that help. But beyond that, it's kind of, we haven't had any, the museum itself hasn't done too many group tours over there.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to tell you thank you so much for being on my show, Annie. I truly appreciate it. You've been very insightful on educating the Hispanic community about the Basque culture, history, and customs. And I look forward and working with you in the future. And as soon as I'm done, I will definitely send you the email you the link so you could share it with the museum and with others. And also one more thing, I'm interested in getting like some Basque language or Basque history books. That does the museum have any that they give out, or what?
Yeah, we have like a little gift store in our museum. So we have a few books for people that are interested in various topics. A couple of my suggestions would be A Basque History of the World by Mark Kurlansky. Is kind of a broad view of Basques and their immigrations throughout the world. And then if you wanted something very specific to the Boise area, oh, it's Dreamer. Have forgotten what it is called. Point being, we have several books about Basque culture and history and things like that in our museum store.
Okay, cool. I'll definitely check it out. And again, thank you so much for your time, Annie. And I'll look to be speaking with you sometime in the future.
Very good. Thank you.
Have yourself a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye bye.